Welcome to this explainer of our source material. Today, we're zooming right past the raw numbers to uncover the deeply human story hidden behind the statistics of the 1917 Great Migration to Pittsburgh. We're going to examine exactly what the typical journey looked like for tens of thousands of Southern Black workers who traveled north during this incredible industrial boom. So, what did it actually take to pack up your entire life and move to the Steel City in 1917? Let's step directly into the shoes of a typical migrant facing this massive, life-altering decision. Imagine the sheer courage it took to pack up everything you owned, often with a family in tow, and head toward a massive, unfamiliar, deafening industrial hub simply known as the Steel City. Section 1. Leaving the South. The economic and social push. Our story starts down in the American South. You had severe economic hardship, like the boll weevil crop failures that literally devastated the cotton industry, combining with deep social and political oppression. It created this powerful push northward. But, what actually convinced these families to make such a dangerous leap into the unknown? What was that tipping point that made the incredible risks of migrating seem absolutely necessary? Well, the economic temptation was just undeniable. According to the 1917 data from our sources, the South offered an average wage of about $2.15 a day. And, get this, a staggering 28% of laborers were working over 12 hours a day. Then you look at Pittsburgh. They were offering an average of $2.85 a day, with only 4% working those grueling 12-plus hour shifts. Higher pay for shorter hours? That was a powerful magnet for a better life. And when we dig into where this workforce actually came from, nearly half of the migrants packed up from just two states, Alabama and Georgia. Alabama is hugely represented here, contributing a massive portion. Our sources point out that this is because Alabama's workers, specifically those from Birmingham, which was known as the Pittsburgh of the South, were already completely familiar with the heavy iron and steel industry waiting for them up in Pennsylvania. Section 2. The Secret Journey North and the Perils of Travel. Actually getting to Pittsburgh was incredibly dangerous. Southern industries were absolutely terrified of losing their labor force. Because of this, migrants often had to flee in secret, under the cover of night. We're talking walking miles to random, unknown train stations just to avoid having their tickets confiscated and destroyed by local authorities. The intimidation was constant. There's one account from the sources where a white man tries to terrify travelers by claiming people are freezing to death in Pittsburgh. The crazy part? He made this threat in the sweltering heat of June 1917. It just highlights the relentless psychological pressure these migrants faced every single step of the way. Section 3. Finding a place to sleep and the resulting housing shock. Imagine you're an exhausted migrant finally stepping off that train. You're hoping for a land of opportunity, right? Instead, you're hit with severe, dangerous congestion. Our sources show a shocking 50% of migrants were shoved into overcrowded rooming houses, 35% in tenements, and 12% in makeshift camps, boxcars, or even churches. Barely 2.5% managed to secure a private single-family residence. Most were just forced into attics, converted storerooms, or completely dilapidated sheds. And it gets worse. Landlords ruthlessly maximize their profits using something called the double-shift bed system. Basically, a single bed was rented twice in a 24-hour period. That meant a migrant could literally only be in the room while they slept. The exact second they woke up, they had to surrender that bed to another worker who was just coming off a shift. It left them with absolutely nowhere to go during their waking hours. One truly heartbreaking account from the sources really grounds all these numbers in human reality. A migrant woman, who was actually making a comparatively solid wage for the time, $10 a week, was so appalled by the living conditions that she literally packed her trunks to go right back south. She noted that she'd never lived in such houses in her life. It shows that despite the higher wages, the slum congestion in Pittsburgh was so unbearable and frankly so devoid of basic dignity that many just chose to forfeit the money and return home. Section 4. Life in the Mills. A harsh reality. Now, for those who stuck it out and endured the housing crisis, survival meant braving the absolute roar and clangor of the great Pittsburgh steel mills. But we have to remember who these folks were before they got there. Back in the South, many of these migrants had incredibly diverse skill sets. They were independent farmers, crop sharers, sawmill workers. In fact, the data shows 11% were skilled or semi-skilled tradesmen. They brought a massive wealth of varied experience up north with them. But once they hit Pittsburgh, they faced a brutal compromise. 95% of these diverse workers were immediately relegated to heavy, unskilled labor in the steel mills or on the railroads. Only a tiny 4% managed to find skilled work. They essentially had to completely reset their professional status, treating all their specialized skills for the backbreaking, pace-setting labor of Northern industry. To top it all off, financial exploitation was running completely unchecked. The sources point out one specific instance where a migrant was scammed into paying an astronomical $50 a month just for an old, falling-down shack. And the kicker? The contract forced him to pay for all the repairs on top of that rent. So those newly earned higher wages we talked about, they were constantly being drained right back out by exploitative landlords. Section 5. The Stranger in Town and Social Friction. Beyond the grueling 10-hour mill shifts and the terrible housing, newly arrived migrants had to navigate intense social friction in a city that often viewed them with deep suspicion. Consider this number, 1716. That is the staggering amount of migrants arrested and then subsequently discharged without fines in just 1916 and 1917 alone. This massive figure proves that local police were aggressively targeting these friendless, newly arrived strangers on petty or entirely baseless charges of suspicion. They were heavily policed simply for existing in their new environment. So where could they go? The city provided absolutely zero recreational facilities. And remember, the rooming houses literally kicked them out onto the street when they weren't sleeping in their double-shift beds. Because of this, the local saloon became the only open door for relaxation. Naturally, this led to further social friction, but as the sources rightly point out, it was quite literally the only hospitality offered to them in the entire city. If we look at the historical timeline, we can really contextualize this entire migration. Pennsylvania had a long, proud history as a beacon of freedom, starting with the 1780 Gradual Abolition Act, all the way to serving as a vital underground railroad station in the 1850s. But the 1917 industrial boom, that severely tested the reality of that promise. The sudden arrival of tens of thousands of Southern Black workers tested those historic Northern ideals against the harsh, unforgiving limits of urban integration and raw industrial exploitation. As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with something to really think about. If the factory wages bought you freedom from the oppressive South, but ended up costing you your home, your health, and in so many ways, your dignity, did you truly find the promised land? It's a wildly complex question about the true cost of migration, and it stands as a real testament to the incredible resilience of the men and women who sacrificed absolutely everything to build the modern steel industry.